get started. So the psychology of customer behavior. So welcome everybody. And I'm really, really pleased and actually very honored to be asked by Cheryl and Beck and the W&A group to for me to facilitate the first of the winter business insight series, where it is jam-packed full. We've got lots of stuff. And one thing with me is I love teaching, and I was just saying to the girls before, I love imparting knowledge, and I want you guys to really learn and understand and take some massive takeaways from this that you can use in your own businesses, in life in general, to be honest, because, you know, business is life, and be able to you know, sort of accelerate and think a little bit, as we say, think outside the box, which is sort of my mantra, which I've been saying for 20 years, which is why that's the tagline of the business. But I wanted to welcome you. And what we do is we inspire businesses and people to impact the world. So that's what we're capable of doing. We are all superheroes. We all have superpowers, just in different industries and very diverse. And we need to tap into that, which we can. And I'll give you a few more skills and tools to be able to do that. And so this masterclass has been designed to help you focus, develop, and practice. There's got to be a practical element to this. Phenomenal sales skills needed to be successful in today's world of business. So just a little itty bitty bit of housekeeping, which you hear all the time, but I just wanted to reiterate a few things. That obviously, if you could please put your phones to silent. If you've got to take a call, and I mean, life goes on, doesn't it? Yeah, I understand, but just you're all on mute anyway, but I just would like, as much as I can, your undivided attention, as much as possible. I really want you to listen and learn. There are no stupid questions. In fact, I get asked this a lot because people sometimes are a little bit embarrassed, and this is a psychological safe space for everyone to ask any type of question. In fact, if you're asking a question, it's actually quite smart, because it means that you want to learn. So no stupid questions. We are, as Cheryl said, there will be a Q&A at the end where we can go into a lot more of your own questions and applications to your own business. We're here to share knowledge, and we are here to have fun. So a little bit about me. I am, and that was a lovely introduction, Cheryl, thank you, but I am a business and sales psychologist. So basically what that is someone that taps into the psyche, the emotion, and the logic of a customer or a client to ethically influence them to change a decision, or to buy from you, or to work with you. My background is actually in medicine, neuroscience, behavioral economics, actually consumer psychology. So my background, I was actually a radiation oncologist, pediatric. And from the understanding and the learnings from children, believe it or not, and obviously their support network, and the way that you can influence, sometimes manipulate, but we don't talk about manipulation because that's a negative connotation. Influence is positive. Decisions for someone that has a terminal illness. And after being clinical for many, many years, 10 years, I stepped into the world of medical business. And that's when I saw the correlation between the conversations and the behaviors that I was seeing with myself and my patients, and then myself and customers and clients. And that's where the neuroscience kicked in. And I really dived into that understanding of, you know, essentially patients are customers or clients, and the same thing in business, obviously, because medicine is a business. And that's where that background of me stepping into the behavioral science and behavioral economics world began. I'm a graduate of University of Sydney, where I did my med degree. Also, I've graduated from Harvard Business School and Harvard Medical School, doing genetics, genomics, and genomic sequencing. I am an author, so I have written and published a book called Solving the Sales Equation. So it's basically understanding the science of sales in a non-scientific way. And it's a workbook. So for me, it was important that what I published was something that people were able to not just read, but do and practice. Again, we're going back to that practical sense of understanding the tools. So it's quite a big book. It's quite comprehensive, but it teaches you the skills of the science of sales and business. A keynote speaker. I've been a lecturer and keynote speaker around the world for 15 years and currently completing my PhD in business neuroscience, which will be completed next year. And this all started, by the way, by a present that Santa gave me when I was 5. Santa gave me the game Operation. And you probably remember when you had to put the organs in the little holes and it would buzz. And people thought that was funny. I actually thought it was different. It wasn't funny at all. I actually got really upset because for me, it was like you just killed the patient. And from that, I stepped into the business world. So it's that game that started it all. So Leanne Elich Consulting, what do? We want you to occupy a unique space in the competitive market that is considered iconic and superior in the hearts and the minds of consumers. And we'll be diving into this quite a bit. We help teach you the skills, strategies, and tactics to influence your customers, close more sales, increase customer retention rate, and ultimately accelerate business growth. And we do this through the magic of behavioral science and psychology, which I absolutely love. And this is what we're going to be going through today. So by the end of the masterclass, so I want you to this is what you'll be able to do. Understand the fundamentals of behavioral science and consumer psychology. We're going to recognize behavioral science and consumer psychology principles in the real world. And we're going to learn how to apply these principles successfully to your work. So what I decided to do was to break this masterclass into 3 lessons. Just to, again, we will talk about a lot about cognitive load, and we have a fantastic 2.5 hours together. But just to, break it down so it's easier to digest, not that it's difficult or complex, but I just wanted to be more structured and disciplined because that's how our brains operate, believe it or not. So lesson 1, why do people behave the way they do? 3 things to know about how people think and how to use behavioral science and psychology in business. Lesson 2, which is a doozy, like fabulous doozy, 10 commandments of customer psychology. We'll be going through all 10. And lesson 3 is a simple psychology framework that I teach and use with my clients, and actually I have with big business. So I've worked in small business and in big corporate around the world. And I've used these pretty much in just about every country that I've worked in around the world. I'll be teaching you that today and apply how you can apply it to your business. So first of all, I want to tell you a story. It's because we're all about storytelling. I mean, we're all about sales and storytelling, business is storytelling, marketing storytelling, everything storytelling. When people ask me what I do for work, I usually answer, I love what I do. I talk to people every single day. And they say, oh, that's interesting. And it's like, yeah, it's awesome. It's the best, because as soon as I open my mouth and start a conversation or engage in some kind of communication, I'm telling a story and I'm actually engaged in a sales process. Sales doesn't have to be the transfer of money. It doesn't need to be transactional. It can be a transfer of knowledge, guidance, advice. Also, me learning from the person that I'm speaking to. So every time we tell a story and we have a conversation, we are actually entering a sales process and we are influencing the other person's behavior. So there's 3 things that I want you to think about next time you're engaging in a conversation. I think about this all the time. How do they feel? Not how you feel. How do they feel? Do they feel that they're connected? Do they feel that they're going to build a relationship with you? What do they want? Are you able to solve their problem? Remember, problem solving makes people feel good. In fact, there's only 2 reasons why someone buys something, and that is to solve a problem or to feel good, to be honest. And we're going into that a little bit more. And how can I help? So how can you help someone? Understanding it's a win-win situation. So long gone are the days. I opened the bin and threw this tactic in the bin 20 years ago, where you negotiate for a win-lose. Nothing is about a win-lose. It's about a win-win. People think that someone needs to lose when you have a conversation, you're engaging with a client or a customer, especially when it comes to pricing negotiation or pricing psychology, which is a whole nother 2.5 hours. We're not talking about that here, but it's not. It's a win-win. So let's dive into lesson 1. What are behavioral science and psychology? Now, we are a small group, which is really great, actually. This is a nice group, so we can be super interactive. But you're probably thinking, oh, I know. And you probably do know. However, do you really understand behavioral science and psychology in the consumer world? So just to make sure that we all understand, including myself, the fundamental principles of what we're going to be talking about today, I'm just going to break it down for you very quickly. So behavioral science is understanding why people behave the way they do. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but the basic fundamental principle is that. Psychology is understanding why people think and behave the way they do. And then we can mix them together. And that's sort of the umbrella. We can then add in a sort of another factor, which is behavioral economics. And that's understanding the effects of psychological, cognitive, emotional, and cultural factors and how they influence human behavior, think and behave, and decisions to purchase. So ultimately, that's where we want to have the influence. So why do people behave the way that they do? There's 2 subsets. Information sciences, which is how human behavior and decisions are affected by information. So it's the information that we have around us, the information that is given to us, and how it affects us to make a decision. And the disciplines within information sciences are cognitive science, neuroscience, and neuromarketing. We're not going into that today, but especially Beck and Cheryl, neuromarketing would be something you would be very familiar with in terms of comms and marketing for sure. Relational sciences, how human behavior and decisions are affected by social interactions, about one another. What's acceptable behavior? What do we want to do to please someone, or are we going to hurt someone? So it's these interactions that we have with the outside world and with people. And the 2 disciplines under relational sciences are cognitive psychology and social psychology. So let's really think about, why do people behave the way they do? And you probably think, oh, well, they just behave the way they do. Actually, we don't just behave the way we do. There's actually 3 principles, and these are quite powerful principles. And it's the way that our brains work. We can't change that. It is neuroscience. It's the way that we as human beings operate and as a species operate. And they're basically these 3 principles run everything. So everyone is irrational, and you're probably thinking, well, I'm not irrational. First of all, years ago, I'm like, I'm not irrational. I make good decisions. Well, do I? Actually, we are irrational, and we have to be, because we cannot process the amount of information that is out there. So we have to make shortcuts. And you'll hear me talk about mental shortcuts and heuristics a lot. And that is something I talk about on a daily basis, to be honest. So we have to be irrational. It's the only way. We don't know what exactly motivates people. Sometimes we don't even know what motivates us, but we don't really know. And no one likes to think. And again, this doesn't come down to being lazy, doesn't come down to, oh, I can't be bothered. This is, again, is the cognitive overload. Now, I've built this graph on the left, and this is actually basically, this graph is how we make decisions and how we think. This was a study that came out of Harvard many years ago, that determined that about 90%, actually 93% of decisions, any decision we make, so whether we're buying something or it doesn't matter what the decision is, whether we're opening the fridge to decide what we're going to have to eat, whether going shopping, whether we've got to delegate duties and tasks, 93% of those decisions are based using emotion. And then the other 7% is actually logic. And I'm going to give you an example. And this is an example that I use a lot, and we'll be referring to it as well. And basically, I love shoes. Those of you that know me know I absolutely love shoes. Do I need another pair of shoes? Of course I don't. I've only got like 100. Not in this cupboard. There's that cupboard's full of coats. In the other room, I've got a full cupboard full of shoes, which I love. But I'm gone shopping, and these shoes stick out at me as I'm going past, and I'm going, oh gosh, I love those shoes. Emotion. Do I need them? Of course I don't need them. I've got 100 pairs, but they are solving a problem, because you need to have shoes on your feet to walk. I mean, in this day and age and in the city, I mean, technically, you can walk around barefoot, but no one wants to do that. You do. So it is going to solve a problem, because I need footwear. But do I need these shoes? Of course I don't, but I love them. I love them because they've got, I don't know, I love accessories. So they've got some embellishment on them, and they're pink. I've got 3 pairs of pink shoes, but this is a different shade of pink. And all of a sudden I'm imagining the outfit I'm going to wear with these shoes, and how spectacular when I go to the next meeting that I'm going to feel wearing these shoes. But of course I don't need them. So it's this emotion. But then I start trying to rationalize it, that 7% with logic. Well, firstly, they're on sale. Bargain. Fantastic. They are got a thicker heel than what I normally have. So on Thursdays, I'm in the city very early, from 6 a.m. every single Thursday. And I'm normally running around the city with having meetings all day. These are perfect because they're stylish. They've got a heel, but a thick heel, so I can run around. So I'm justifying all this just to buy this pair of shoes. So this is what the example I'm giving you, even though it's shoes, this is what we do with every decision, believe it or not. It's subconscious. We don't actually understand why we're doing it. We just do it. So let's break this down. Everyone is irrational. Now, I'm going to also give you 3 resources, 3 books that are awesome in this area. They are my go-to, obviously, besides all the textbooks I've done over the years, over the years. They're really good. So Professor Dan Ariely wrote this fantastic book, and I've got them here so I can show you so you can see what they look like. Predictably Irrational, fantastic. One of his quotes, and he's actually a professor in behavioral science. We all make the same mistakes over and over because of the basic wiring of our brains. Now, you hear the term history repeats itself. Unfortunately, yes, because we know no different. Now, even knowing what I know and having studied this area for over 20 years, yes, I tend to try not to, but even when I'm in a stressful situation, you revert back to your default, or what's called a default bias, and we make the same mistakes over and over again. Now, let's talk a bit more about irrational behavior. So this was a study that was done with 2 Panadol, or actually, to be honest, these are actually aspirin. It was in America. It was actually aspirin. Because people had a headache. They did a study. They had 2 groups, and one of the aspirins was 1 cent. The other aspirin was 50 cents. And they told people to choose which aspirin they thought would be more effective, and also when they took each aspirin, which one was more effective. Now, the aspirin were identical. It was from the same blister pack. It was the same brand, the same dose, the same composition. They were exactly the same. But people over 50%, actually, I think it was around about 65%, said, oh, this one, 50% was much better, much, much better. My headache was gone in half an hour. But when I took the other one, it didn't really do anything. Now, that's actually not true, because they're exactly the same. But we have this bias and this irrational behavior that we think, because it's a little bit more expensive, surely it's got to be more effective. But it wasn't. They were both effective, but it's how we're thinking irrationally. We're making shortcuts. Here's another example. There's a restaurant. They mind you, neither of these appeal to me because I'm actually vegetarian, but it was a chicken dish, and they had this chicken dish, fancy chicken dish that was $35 on the menu, and no one was buying it. And they thought, gosh, do we reduce the price? What do we do? Because this is our iconic signature dish. And they actually got someone to come in, and they said, put on another dish that's more expensive. So they created a meat dish or steak dish and they made it $69. Now, all of a sudden, the chicken dish isn't the most expensive dish on the menu. It's the second most expensive. So when someone goes, oh, what do I want? Oh, I want the chicken dish. Oh, it's $35. I don't know. Oh, but I can get the steak for $69. So actually the $35 is not too bad. The chicken dish skyrocketed. So rather than touching the price, we actually created a bias of irrational behavior to guide people to buying the chicken dish. Again, irrational behavior. Second, we don't know what actually motivates people. So David Ogilvy, advertising and marketing legend, back in the 40s and 50s, I believe, in the 50s, I think, absolute guru. The trouble with market research is that people don't think how they feel, they don't say what they think, and they don't do what they say, which is 100% correct. Unfortunately, and this is no disrespect to anyone in the market research space, because it is important, we have to get feedback, we have to get information, and we survey people, but that's how we get it. What we need to concentrate more is watching behavior and what people do and the actions they take rather than what they write and how they respond. Because what happens, we just talked about that 93% of our decisions are emotional, which is subconscious. We become accidental liars. Now, I am sure there's been a survey or feedback form that you've told a little itty bitty white lie because you think that that is what someone wants or the acceptable behavior. We are all accidental liars. There was a study that was done with about 3,000 people of hand washing after you go to the toilet. And basically the question was, did you wash your hands? I mean, it wasn't as simple as that. I'm just simplifying. It was, how did you wash your hands after you go to the toilet? Of course, everyone's like, of course I washed my hands, you know. Cool. I can tell you, there's no way 3,000 people, especially, no offense, I don't think we have any boys on here, but no offense, boys, especially boys, there's no way 3,000 people would have washed their hands, but they know they should have. Emotionally, that's something they should have done. That's what is the social norm, and that's acceptable behavior. Unfortunately, they are the type of decisions and the type of information that we get back because we make the same mistakes over and over again. Anchoring. So anchoring is a bias, and it's how our decisions are influenced by the first information we see. So again, we don't know what really motivates people. And there was a roulette study done by another genius, Nobel Prize winner, Daniel Kahneman. This is another book, Resource 2, Thinking Fast and Slow. Unbelievable book. A little bit of a tricky read because it's a bit of a chubby book, but phenomenal. About the two brains, fast thinking, slow thinking, and how we make decisions based on that. Basically, in a sentence, that's really what it's about. Unbelievable book. And he did a study where he got a group of people and they were at a roulette table, and the roulette table was rigged. So for the little ball, when you threw the ball in, to stop at 10 or 65 only. They didn't know this, but that's what happened. They threw it off 65. They threw it off 10. Oh, look, 65. And then out of the blue, they asked a random question, and they asked them what the percentage of members of the United Nations were African, which is just random. Those that had their ball stop at 65 actually estimated 25% higher than those that the ball landed on 10, because the information that they received, the 65 was higher than the 10, subconsciously engaged with them to emotionally create a number that was inflated because of the relevance between the 65 and 10. So again, we don't really know what motivates people. No one likes to think. Cognitive load. Unfortunately, and we're going to be going to almost our capacity today, but cognitive load is the capacity of our brains to process information. Even the smart, and we're all geniuses here, but even the smartest of us have a limited working memory at any given moment, because our brains are metabolically expensive. They burn a lot of calories. in fact, our brains burn the most calories out of everything, believe it or not. And when you hear, the number thrown around that we only use about 17 to 20% of our brain capacity, that's actually right. We are not designed to, we are incapable of using a full 100%. We would actually just explode, literally. We have a lot of neural plasticity, but there is a limit to how much we can actually mold ourselves in the way that we think, because we just don't have the capacity to do it. And unfortunately, social media has taken advantage of that. There's actually a big study, and it's based on some of you might have seen The Social Dilemma, that sort of documentary on Netflix. And there is a Stanford study based on the cognitive influence of cognitive load and what social media is doing to influence us unethically, unfortunately, because we do not have the capacity to process the amount of information that's given to us, which is why we then make poor decisions. But that's a whole nother masterclass on that. And because of that, we have decision fatigue. So we're not lazy. It's not that we don't want to think. We just get to a limit where we cannot think anymore. Too many decisions cause cognitive overload and can lead to poor decision making. And this is absolutely an iconic example is going on a diet. At some stage we've all gone, I'm just going to watch what I eat. And we're so good during the day. We have fruit and we have our cereal, we have a nice salad for lunch, and we do all this and we're following the plan. Then we get to dinner and we're exhausted, and we're not just physically exhausted, we're actually mentally exhausted, which is what people don't actually realize. The last thing you want to do is to cook something healthy. So we make poor decisions and grab a bag of chips because it's easy, it's convenient, it's quick. And then we obviously feel really bad because we go, oh God, I was so good all day. And that's that one decision. And now I've ruined it all. That is decision fatigue. And that is also why Noom, I don't know if you've seen ads on TV or in magazines and probably on social media. Noom uses psychology to actually engage their clients and step them through the process. Very clever. I actually subscribed to Noom, not to go on a diet, but I wanted to follow the process to see what it was and actually what they were doing in terms of cognitive biases. Very, very interesting what they do. And this is where meal plans are more successful because you don't actually need to think as much when you have your meals ready or you're being told what to cook and to eat, because it reduces that decision fatigue. So how do we get customers to choose our product or services when they're doing so much thinking? How can we guide decision making when we are doing so much thinking? And the answer is actually from another Nobel Prize winner. Third resource, brilliant, Nudge, by Richard Thaler. We design an environment to guide customers to the right decisions. We can influence it with the right tools, the right tactics, and the right resources. Absolutely, we can. And the framework or the method behind this is called Nudge. And Nudge, which is the name of the book, funnily enough. Nudge is an intervention that gently or steers, I actually say ethically steers, because we're all about ethics. In fact, the reason why I stepped out of big corporate was because of unethical selling. That's a whole nother story, but this is why I'm here today doing what I'm doing. Ethically steers individuals towards a desired action. So how do we use Nudge? The first thing is we need to walk in our customers' shoes. So what are they thinking? What are they feeling? What is it that they experience that they come to you? What problem are you solving? But how are you making them feel? Remember, I want to tell you a story. How do they feel? Can I help them? What problem they need solved? Going back to the story, remember, you need to walk in their shoes and understand. And none of us do, unfortunately. But you need, well, man, I'm going to say I do, but so I should. I'm teaching this stuff, so of course I should. So, but that's what we need to do. We need to frame communication differently. We'll be talking about framing in a minute. And that's the way that we position our business, way we position our solution, our value proposition. We're getting into sales now. framing the message, framing our core values, framing the way that we operate to build trust. So framing communication. Psychological pricing. Now, those of you that know me know that I've done a lot of work in this space. I'm actually building an ebook in this, and I've done a lot of posts on my Friday fun facts. So those of you that don't know, every Friday on social media and mainly on LinkedIn, I have Friday fun facts. It starts off with Friday fun facts with the little clown emoji, and every Friday is some kind of psychological trigger or bias about business and sales, and we talk about something different the different topic each month. And one month I did pricing psychology, which has been requested for another month, so I'm going to do that again. But we need to be very strategic in the way that we price. Now, I'm not talking about lowering our prices. In fact, I call that the law of pulling your pants down when you lower your price, because you're revealing too much. You never do that. There are so many other tactics and strategies we can do in the way that we price to nudge our customers to us. Designing choice architecture. So the way that we not so much advertise, but expose our products and services and what we do. Now, Starbucks does this quite well. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I'm not 100% sure exactly what they're called, but you have your small, medium, large, and I think there's a grande and a venti, or I don't know, but let's just say small, medium, large, extra large. Just go to a coffee shop and they've got that. Choice architecture. And again, these are things I want you to think about when you're out when you leave here at 12:30. I want you to actually start thinking differently. So I'm actually going to read your minds. No, I'm not, but this is what I want you to do. How are they positioning those cups? Is the extra large, or they'd be silly doing the extra large. They need to do the large, in my opinion, as a behavioral scientist. When they're lined up, does one stick out a little bit more? Is one a different color? Does one have a lid on, the others don't? Is there something that is drawing your attention or nudging you to a certain size? This is choice architecture, how you create an environment that influences and pulls in a customer to a product that you want. It's almost like you've got this invisible string that you're pulling. They don't realize it, but you've got this invisible string you're pulling towards it. That's choice architecture. And creating meaningful business. And we don't talk about this enough. What does your business do? How do you connect with your clients and customers? What emotional? We talk about 93%. Remember, 93. How do we connect emotionally? How do we communicate, beg your pardon, emotionally? That's meaning. Remember, people buy from people. Even when people say to me, oh, but I'm a B2B. Yeah, but you're not selling to a building. You're still selling to people within a building, that's within a business. So people buy from people. There's that know, like, trust, as marketing says, or trust, engage, a connection. That's creating meaningful business. This is a very interesting study in Australia with KFC French fries. So they wanted to create a campaign with these $1 French fries, and they wanted to boost sales. And obviously that's the whole point, but they've got this $1 French fry campaign. And what they did is they engaged with actually Ogilvy in Australia, a marketing firm, to do some tests on different biases and what tactic to use to engage or nudge people to buy the French fries. So they used 5 different methods. One was loss aversion. 100%, God, they must be French fries of gold if they're $100. $1 French fries won't be around forever. So it's that, oh my God, I'm going to miss out. Won't be around forever, because we hate losing. We hate losing. It's one of the commandments. Value payoff. $1 French fries, but pick up only. So it's a bit of a, you can pay $1, but you got to pick them up. Reciprocity. You wanted free French fries. We'll meet you halfway with our French fries for $1. So clearly they were obviously $2, but I'll give you a little bit, but you need to give me a little bit. And I mean, Amber and Stacey, if you're there, we talk about reciprocity every week, don't we? Yeah. I mean, yeah. So it's that, I'll give you a little, I'll give you a little bit. I'm obliged to then give you a little bit. So I'll meet you halfway. Anchoring. Now, they call this anchoring, but there's actually a bit of scarcity in this as well, which wasn't actually documented in the study. I think was a little bit of a boo-boo from my experience, but there, I would say anchoring / scarcity. Maximum 4 per customer. Oh my God, they must be popular if I can only get 4. So maybe I'll get 4 today. They're not going to be 4 forever. So I might get 4 again tomorrow, and I'll just let everyone else know that you can only get 4. So it's that urgency, which scarcity or anchoring. And social norming. Everyone's enjoying our French fries for $1. Why not you? The results were really interesting. The loss aversion, $1 French fries won't be around forever, was sort of mediocre response. People were like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll get some French fries, but not fussed. The value payoff, $1 French fries pick up only, again, same response. Social norming, which surprisingly absolutely didn't work at all. Everyone's enjoying our French fries for $1. Why not you? Okay. Yeah. They weren't fussed by that. In fact, there was no response whatsoever. But the two that were really successful was reciprocity. I'll meet you halfway. And the anchoring / scarcity, maximum 4 per customer. In fact, the results, 56 increase in the total French fry sales, using the reciprocity, meet you halfway, and 84% increase in the 4 fry sales, maximum of 4 per customer. So these are tools and tactics that you can use. And that's why I'm trying to give you real life and real world examples to nudge your customers and clients into understanding what you do and working with you and buying from you. So there's lots of things that you can do. I'm actually going to go into lesson 2, but before, Beck, I might just see if there's any questions.
No questions as yet, Leanne, but a couple of comments. I think we can probably all relate to that scenario of getting to the end of the day and going, what the hell am I going to have for dinner? Or in my house, it's the conversation that goes around and around in circles. What are we having? What do you feel like? I don't know. What do you feel like? On and on. So I think, yeah, a lot of relating to that. And ultimately, yeah, I think that not knowing what people are motivated by, but also just that sort of overwhelm of decision making.
Yeah. And, it's just me and my husband. And let me tell you, the conversation goes on for 2 hours. In fact, sometimes Chris will ask me at lunchtime, what are we going to have for dinner, just in preparation to try and reduce the decision fatigue when it comes later in the day.
Exactly.
And even then it's like, I can't deal with it right now. I'm in the middle of doing stuff, but it's so true. And until, we talk about it like this, we actually realize this is what's happening. Exactly. This is why we're feeling like this. It's actually not that we don't know. We haven't got time to think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Janine's just asked a question too, Leanne. She said, would each of the different sales techniques work on different types of products?
Different sales techniques.
Just to clarify that, Leanne.
Yeah, yes, please. Yep.
You went through those 5 different techniques that they use for price. Yep. And, you're looking at maybe a service-based industry or a particular product, so is it a matter of testing those to see what works best for you, or have you got experience that this one works best?
Yeah,
or do all of them?
Yeah, no, all of them. All of them need to be. In fact, to be honest, this framework, there's actually 7 in total, but the other 2 are a bit iffy. I don't use them. One's about being creative, which you have to be, but and I understand that, triggering creation, but that is more wishy-washy. So I break it down to these 5, but all 5 for products and services. So, my is service-based, obviously, with everything that I do. And this is something that I do on a daily basis. My whole business is basically based around, well, I know what I'm doing, obviously, so ethically nudging, but using this framework to get my team to understand the customers, to understand potential, when I'm prospecting of what they want. So all 5, Janine.
Thanks.
Yeah. To be honest, also, if you're a service-based business, pricing psychology would be huge for you. Okay, so lesson 2, the 10 commandments of customer psychology. Now, I'm not going to read them all out here because we are going through them one by one with examples. So in the essence of time and you guys listening to my voice, which hopefully is okay, I'll skip over reading and we'll go straight into each one. So commandment number 1, customers are influenced by how information is presented. This is called the framing effect. So decisions are influenced by the way information is shown. And this is really interesting because framing is one of the main ways to either engage with a customer or disengage with a customer or client, to be honest. And let's have a look at some examples. So I've got 3 here. Presence versus absence. And some of you might have seen the yogurt one that I did with Friday Fun Facts. So it's what is there, what is available, and what is missing in a way. So we've got 2 yogurt containers here. Looks like cherry yogurt, 20% fat, but 80% fat free. Now, they're both 80% fat free and both have 20% fat, but we've framed them differently. So which one is going to nudge the customer a bit more? Well, 80% fat free in the study, that's the one that went off the charts with purchases and sales, was the 80% fat free. Still has 20% fat, but again, where we're framing. Back to my shoes. Framing, percentage versus dollar value. Sale, beautiful. Let's call them Manolos. They're Manolos. 20% off or $50 off. So framing is different. So 20% off, wow, $50 off. Now, this may be different for some of us because remember, especially when it comes to pricing, it's relative to a reference price. So we've got to relate a price to something else. So we could then have the information of something that we previously purchased. So remember the roulette wheel where, 25% more when they hit the 65 number. If we've just purchased something that's $600 and all of a sudden we're primed with this, and then we go and buy a pair of shoes at 20% off, we're going to think we're getting more off with 20% than if we just bought, I don't know, the yogurt for $5.50. We are primed that the 20% off may not be as strong or as much of a nudge, but that $50, so again, depends on, but generally the percentage is what actually wins, to be honest. Framing, time versus money. We actually value time a lot more than money, believe it or not, what we do, especially, and understandably now, because we're so hyper-connected and there's so much going on, our time is very precious. And we absolutely value it a lot more. So there's 2 options, 2.5 hours per week. This was a study that was done by a grocery store, actually getting someone to, like, you send in your list, your order, and you get your groceries picked for you and delivered. So it's not just like ordering online. You just send a list. It's a little bit different. So you don't even, it was in the UK, I think, 2.5 hours per week or $150 per year. Now I know which way I'd go. Also, with my brain, that scientific medical brain that I have, the first thing I did when I saw this is like, okay, 2.5 hours per week, 150 hours per year. So 2.5 hours per week times 52 weeks, blah, 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 blah. That was 130. So that's just over $1 per week. Forget it, $1 a week. I want my 2.5 hours back. So again, that's the emotion and then the rational or the logic coming in to try and justify. So time versus money. Most people chose the 2.5 hours per week. Commandment 2, customers use limited information to make decisions. Again, mental shortcuts, heuristics, mental shortcuts that help our brains make fast decisions with limited information. And this concept is explained very deeply in Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman. about the two brains, our fast brain, slow brain, type 1, type 2, and what we use each type of thinking for. Our slow thinking is generally when we do, say, for instance, I'm doing my PhD and writing thesis and doing study and research. That's slow thinking. That's really the only way. Then there's sort of long-term effects. That's really slow thinking. Everything else is fast thinking. So heuristics are also why we rely on, and I talk a lot about archetypes. I've done a lot of archetypes work with, like, Carl Jung, and studied all his work, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, with archetypes in business, not in marketing, but in business. And this is a crossover with heuristics because our brain loves symbols, patterns, colors, templates, frameworks, anything that makes it easier and reduces the cognitive load. We don't want all the information to put it together ourselves. If we've got it already there, we can then use this and the rest of the space to make other decisions. So anything in terms of, and it's becoming, our cognitive load is increasing. So that's why these days images are so important. Sales and marketing really is so important these days in terms of positioning and showing your value via image and graphics and photos. Infographics are fantastic because someone can tell the story very quickly by looking at the images rather than reading text. So these are things that we need to think of also in a changing business world. Now, some examples: cognitive bias. So what happens with this limited information is we quite often make wrong decisions. Cognitive bias is a systematic error in thinking. It's what experience or variables that we've come across and how we extrapolate and interpret the information to come to a decision. Quite often we weigh it up and we go, okay, which way am I going to go? And depending on the limited information that we have, and it's almost like filling in the blanks. Sometimes we fill in the blanks and we actually make the wrong decision. We might think it's right, but it's not. So that's what a cognitive bias is all about. Then we have confirmation bias, where we try and look at the future or look at something that's going to happen, or that to confirm something based on information that we've had before. So it's so-and-so behave this way, they're going to do it again. Well, no, they actually won't. That's also, it's an assumption, which assumption is a bias, but we're confirming a behavior or a decision in the future, or that's coming up based on what happened previously. And then the halo effect, which is having a fantastic experience, and we only need one. So we're quite simple. We only need one, and we think it's great. So my example I love for this that I use is that you get some skincare and you buy an eye cream. The eye cream is fantastic. And all of a sudden your crow's feet are gone, the lines are, where are the lines gone? Oh, I look 20 years younger. It's fantastic. So all of a sudden the whole skincare range is fantastic. Now, it's highly unlikely, but because of that fantastic experience, we've lifted that halo effect that we think that the entire range is great. 3, customers use emotion to drive most decision-making. Coming back to that 93%. Absolutely. Very, very important to understand that principle. And there's something called the endowment effect. You may have seen my post with the umbrellas on Friday Fun Facts. That was the endowment effect. Ownership or intent to own creates emotional bonds that people don't want to break. So we place a higher value on items that we own or intend to own. So this was the post that I did here, the endowment effect, where we got an umbrella. The umbrella is $10.50. It's not mine. All of a sudden, we might want to put it in our cart when we're shopping, or we're thinking about it. I've gone and I've seen this umbrella. I really like this umbrella. I'm not going to buy it now. I'm going to go home and think about it. That's the standalone. I'm going to go home and think about how many times you go home and think about it, and then you go back and get it, because we've now created an emotional bond. It's is increased in value. Now, it hasn't gone, you're not then buying it at $15.50, it's still $10.50, but you're escalated the value because of the emotional bond. This is also why when you put items in your cart, and you might leave it there, because I'm going to come back for later, quite often it's unfinished business. You've got this emotional bond, it's unfinished business, but then they nudge you even more by saying, we noticed you left something in your cart. So not only have you got that emotional bond, you then got someone going, emotional bond, emotional bond. So of course, what do? You go and buy it. Most of the time, it doesn't happen every time, obviously, but that's the endowment effect. The IKEA effect is that we value something that we've put our blood, sweat, and tears into, and IKEA do this brilliantly. You get, but I mean, quite often they say you get, flat pack box, which includes a divorce certificate, but you hear that all the time. But because of the arguments, I just say to my husband, go away, I'll just do it. I love being handy anyway. But putting something together creates a sense of value and ownership. So if you bought a table, go, oh, I love this table. But if you had bought a table that you had to put together, it's like, look what I did. So there's this inflation of value that we put on that. And a really interesting, well, it wasn't a study, ended up being a study in the end, but Betty Crocker, the cake mix, that brand. I don't know if they ever did it in Australia, but there was a time when the cake mix, all you did was add water. There was nothing. You had the powder and I guess the mix and everything together. Would have been a bit, but anyway. And then you added water and then voila, the cake just appeared. Well, their sales dropped dramatically. Then they did a whole lot of research. They got a behavioral designer to come in, have a look, and said, I don't think people feel that they've achieved anything. So they changed the ingredients where you had to not only add water, but add an egg. So you had to actually physically add an ingredient. So not just water from the tap, go somewhere, buy the egg, get the egg, crack the egg, put the egg in. It might have been 2 eggs or whatever, but it was an egg. Well, up it went, because all of a sudden, look what I've made. Just that one thing of putting an egg in gave people ownership and that satisfaction, that emotional bond that I've created something. And then we've got the peak end rule. And I don't know why the image isn't shown, but basically that is a very happy smiley face. And this is a very frustrated face. So the peak end rule is that we base our experience on the peak and the end of an entire customer journey. So we don't look at the whole experience that we have with someone and average it. There are certain triggers and moments in the customer journey. We'll be talking about customer journey in next lesson, where it triggers us to decide whether it's a good experience or not. So at the beginning, where we want the peak, but also at the end, we actually want a peak. But if we don't, then that's the experience. At the end of the customer journey, if we have a bad experience at the end, we won't go back. So things that we can do is, in terms of peak and ends is, places like, Kmart and Target, they do that well with, a visitor host or customer host, customer host, or greeting, hello, how are you today? Or even just introducing yourself when someone, rings or walks into your store. Or for me, obviously, it's more because I'm a service-based business, people wanting to introduce myself and have a conversation or a Zoom call or a meeting. There's certain ways that I will then engage and introduce myself. That's not just a standard hi, how are you? So they've got that inflated experience that is, something different. That's why business cards, and some of you have heard me talk about this, why business cards are so important. Physical business cards are so important because it helps with the peak experience. And then finishing, whether you finishing it with a client, whether you have a box of chocolates or there's a little coupon, there's all different things that you can do. Real estate agents do this well. We're not saying they do everything well, but they do this well. With the end of the experience, they'll have like a fruit basket or a box or a hamper to thank you and all that kind of stuff. It has to be truly meaningful though. So little things like that, that you remember, oh, that was a great experience, I'm going to come back. 4, customers use context to make decisions. And this is where default bias comes in. Preset choices that take effect if a customer does nothing. Microsoft found that 95%, and when I read this study, I started thinking myself, and I actually went into Outlook and had a look at the defaults to see if I was in this. I sort of am, but not. Microsoft found that 95% of people kept all default settings, even for critical features like autosave. So they didn't even turn that on. It was automatically turned off. So again, this default bias, the context, what is it that we need to do? And remember, we talked about the default bias very quickly, that when we are under stress, when there's lots going on and we get that cognitive overload, default bias becomes very prominent because it's an easy fix or an easy answer. And also a default bias we know is technically safe, not always though. So default biases sort of expand into different areas. And one is the choice paradox. And the reason why default bias is what it is because of basically cognitive overload. There's just too much information for us, so we just leave it as the settings. I can't work this out, leave it as is. So choice paradox is really important in when you, especially, well, actually, I'm not going to say just product. It actually is product and services, because I've worked with clients that have had 10 services. And it's like, oh my God, you need to simplify this. And we love complicating things. I don't know why, because remember, we don't like to think. So I don't know why we complicate it, but we do. So this was a study by Columbia University, and they had 24 types of jam for customers to come in and to buy. And it attracted a lot of shoppers. A lot of people browsed. Whoa, 24 jars of jam. Look at all the jam. That's fantastic. But then when they went to actually go and buy it, they're like, oh my God, what am I going to buy? Cognitive overload, trying to set back to default. So default bias, 3% bought jam. They said, right, that's it. Too much jam. Here's 6. It attracted 40% of browsers. So not as many. Also probably didn't look as attractive either, because there's 6 rather than the 24, but 30% of people bought jam. Salience. Salience is when something sticks out. So it forces you out of that default bias. This is a brilliant ad. I think it's Coop's Paints, where it's on obviously side of a building, and it's, you know, like it's being tipped out of the side of the building, a big window, and spilt all over the car park. And they've even got 2 cars. You can see the van, and I'm pointing, and I know you can't see me pointing, but I don't know if you can see my mouse. But they've got the van, you've got, I don't even know what that is, but it looks like there's flowers sticking out the top of it. But you've got, more importantly, the van and the car that's covered in paint in the car park. It sticks out. It's like, wow, it's taking you out of that default. Oh, I'm going to remember Coop's Paints. Couldn't you remember that? Fantastic ad. Salience. And then the simplicity theory, keeping things simple. And you see this all the time, subscribe and save. Now, one thing with subscribe and save, it can also be a little bit naughty, because some businesses do it to get ongoing business without consent. And there are some companies, only in the US, that tend to do this. So people are thinking they're subscribing, not realizing to subscribe and save, that at every certain point in time, it's going to happen. But the problem is with simplicity theory, we think subscribe and save, it's easy. I'll place my order, I'm going to save money, and then it's done. And yeah, when I subscribe, it's just going to automatically happen. But it needs to automatically happen at the time duration that you want. And that's where the little bit of naughtiness happens, where it needs to be where the customer wants, not when they want. But again, it's simple. It's done, taken care of. 5, customers hate to lose, loss aversion. We all hate to lose, but especially customers. Now, I'm not talking about negotiation here. What I mean is losing something. So people go to great lengths to avoid losing. There is a lot of psychological pain of missing out on something. It is twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the same thing. And this is when we talk about, and in the medical space in particular, I have a lot of quite big medical clients in the surgery space. They go, well, you know, we've got a better instrument. So I have do a lot of neurosurgery, and we have a better instrument for spinal cages, have a better instrument, but the neurosurgeons won't change. Loss aversion. They know they're going to gain something, but the risk is too high. The pain of losing something from what they're currently doing is a lot worse than what they're going to gain. So this is where you need very strategic nudge tactics and value proposition messaging to be able to get some. That's again a whole nother story, but this is where we need to, dive into those areas. But loss aversion is really important. So think about yourself. When I was putting this slide together, I was actually going through the emotion myself. Don't miss out. 40% off. Oh my God, I don't want to miss out. What do I have to do? Gift voucher. This is interesting. Again, this is almost like the absence presence. Gain 50. What is it with the extra zeros for me? Gain $5. Save $5. Oh, I'm going to get $5, but holy moly, I'm going to save $5. So again, that's where everybody went. And then obviously scarcity. And we talked about that a little bit with the KFC chippies. This offer will expire in, and a lot of businesses have, if they've got an offer, they use the countdown, or, in 4 days only, then you get an email 24, ends midnight 24. I mean, I've actually been a victim of that myself. But, oh God, I was looking at a top. I really like this top. And I went, yeah. And then all of a sudden, 24 hours remaining, or offer, it's 7 p.m. offer ends midnight. Oh my God, I've only got 5 hours. I better go and get that top, blah, 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 blah. The other thing that's really important too is when they use popular item or trending now, and it's like, ooh, everybody likes this. Does this mean that there's not going to be many left? So those kinds of tactics. Customers are social creatures, very much, and social norms are important. What is considered normal or acceptable behavior in society? So we talk about social proof. Now, social proof is one of the now 7 principles of influence. Didn't get this book out. Of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Updates his book every year, actually, which is what I'm planning on doing with mine. But so it keeps up to date with all the latest, which is great. There was 6 principles of influence for a long, long time. Beginning of this year, he created a 7th principle called unity, which will be in the latest book. But social proof is one and is extremely important. So we're talking about reviews, most popular testimonials, also brands. So, work with, or clients are, or endorsements from branding ambassadors and things like that. That is de-risking language and de-risking information that makes us more comfortable when we're going to make a decision. It's socially acceptable. So we're okay with that. Customers pay attention to things that are different. It's called the isolation effect. Things stand out, are more likely to be seen and remembered. Also a little bit like salience as well. But obviously you can see here we've got the pencils. Not only is one red, but it's actually sticking up a lot higher than the others. So we remember that. The isolation effect is also called the von Restorff effect. And these were an ad, this was a experimental ad Burger King did, broom through instead of drive through. And what's brilliant about this is it's obviously thinking about, witches and hopping on a broom. And instead of driving through, you're going to hop on your broom and fly through. It would have been good if it was out at the time of Harry Potter, actually. Also, it's funny, got the picture of the person on the broom. You can see someone, you're starting to get the emotional connection of ha, ha, ha on the broom going through, and someone sitting there behind a car driving through on their broom going through. But what is also brilliant about this is with chains of fast food, and especially in the US, we not so much here, but we still do in areas where there's lots of them, you know, McDonald's, then Burger King, Kentucky, Hungry Jack, it stands out because they've all got drive-through written underneath, and all of a sudden you've got broom through, and it's like, oh, I mean, wouldn't never eat at Burger King, but honestly, even just to experience and say something funny about, I'm just brooming through, I probably wouldn't go and get some chips or something. I don't know, but it just, yeah, it's very isolation effect at its peak. And then you see a lot of subscription-based services, SaaS services, where you can see here that the business plan is sticking out. Not only has it got most popular, so it's using the well, sort of scarcity and the oh gosh, just lost the effect that we just can't remember what effect it was. Hang on a minute. It's just slipped my mind. How funny is that? Sorry, scarcity. Oh my gosh, I've been talking about scarcity all day. I couldn't get the word out. So again, most popular, you know, social proof, a bit of scarcity, it's sticking out, it's salient, and isolation. So basically, you know, that's the one they want you to choose. The thing is, we know that. We go, oh, look at that, it's sticking out. We know that's the one they want, yeah. But what ends up happening? We end up getting that. What we tend to do is, if we have time, we will look at the starter and we will compare to the business, and then we'll go to the business plus and we'll compare to the business, and then we'll either get the business. Sometimes people go, I'm not getting the most popular, I'm going to get the next one. So it actually works as a decoy, something called decoy effect, which we're not going into today, where it will actually nudge up. So nudges upward. They use it with at the movies with popcorn brilliantly, with the small, medium, large popcorn with the pricing. So you're nudging to the next one. Number 8, customers pay attention to things that are relevant, and this is the cocktail party effect. So we focus on information that is relevant to them. These are 2 brilliant ads. Cocktail party effect with the Share a Coke campaign. Do you remember when this came out? I don't drink Coke, but I still wanted a bottle with my name on it. Nutella was another one that did it here. People went berserk, really did, with the Nutella jars with their names. And not only that, they then brought in the whopping big ones that you could put your names on. So it became more of a, you know, a piece to look at home on the kitchen bench rather than just chocolate to eat. So that's a really good nudging effect. And obviously the self-reference effect, which was fantastic, that Dove did with the Real Women, Real Beauty campaign, where they've got women all shapes and sizes, you know, skin coloring, ethnicity, from everywhere. Very, very diverse campaign that was extremely popular. And because it was relevant to us, rather than having these gorgeous models. And I know we all want to look like that, but unfortunately we're not all Victoria's Secret. In our heads, we're Victoria's Secret angels, but unfortunately most of us aren't. And I can look at that and go, oh, she's got a little bit of a tummy just like me, or she's got darker skin just like me, or she's, you know, really tall and lanky just like me. You know, so there was that relevance, which is really important. Customers use stories to make sense of the world. Narrative bias. So our brains need to process a lot of information. We create stories to link it all together. What happens though, if when it doesn't make sense, we ignore facts. So even if there's something that is true, but it doesn't fit the equation, so to speak, or our story, we ignore it, conveniently ignore it. Visual storytelling. So these are some great ads. IKEA. We've got, obviously, looks like tablets or sleeping tablets, sleeping pills coming out of the jar, but they're pillows to help you sleep. Stop showing the right product to the wrong consumer, the wrong customer. Brilliant. That's a little smart car with sumo wrestler. That's hilarious. And obviously the McDonald's summer campaign with the golden arches on the bucket and spade. And the background actually was that sand. It doesn't look as good there, but it was like a sandy color as well. And 10, customers use products to tell the world about themselves. And this is called signaling. It's behavior that can convey something about ourselves to others, whether it's true or not. And this happens quite often in the younger generation with designer bags. And sometimes designer bags aren't replicas. They're not the real authentic designer bags, but they're trying to signal that they are a certain type of person that's able to have a designer bag or show off, or create that signal of that's not really them. It could be them, but it may not be as well. Some great campaigns here. Open University on a train station. They're on their way to work. That's everyone on the train station. You're on your way to a pay rise. So saying that you are going to expand your career, your professional development, you're going to rise up the corporate ladder, so to speak. You're not just going to work, you're actually learning and achieving to step up and up and up in the business world. And also status. And again, with, girls and guys with, there was one study was done with a Hermes bag, which was, I think, £6,000 or something like that. And people actually bought the bag. It was a beautiful bag, and people actually bought the bag because, and it was one of these limited edition pieces, of course, but it's that status, like, oh, first of all, you can afford that bag. What do you do? And look at that bag. Yeah. So it's like, that's that status. But this is a great ad. You're not ready. I love this with Rolex. You're young. You haven't been with the company all that long. You're not quite sure of your position. Maybe in a few years when you're a little more established, but not yet. Of course, if you disagree, you can visit an official Rolex jeweler. I think that is actually brilliant, because you're setting the scene for, oh, okay, I'm not ready. Then all of a sudden, actually, I am. And I'm going to call Rolex. Also, Rolex is also showing here the journey of someone from being young and inexperienced and in the working world, stepping up into success, and that succession as well. So there's a couple of different things they've done here in this ad, which is really good. Okay, so before we go into lesson 3, any questions, Beck, or comments?
Not at the moment. If anyone does have any questions, please drop them in the chat now. I know Sue made a comment in the chat about the broom through at Burger King, and even how much that sort of sounds like Zoom and gives you that impression of it being fast as well.
Right, yeah.
But
yeah,
potentially
so
having
that's almost like that's almost like a relevance bias, not a self-reference, but that's right, yeah. So broom, Zoom, yeah, true.
Yeah, just
actually, I agree with that. That's a great pickup, actually, Sue.
Lots of comments. Everyone's really enjoying the content, and I think a lot of talk around there being a lot there, but it all being really great. So I think everyone's looking forward to lesson 3.
Okay. Am I going too fast?
No, I think it's a pretty good pace. Everyone else. Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is a little bit slower now because we're coming towards the end. So we're going to talk about the 4 C's framework and how we can put this all together to successfully implement it into our businesses. So what's going on? Okay. So the 4 C's framework that we use and that we've used for a long time, and this is based on some deficiencies I've found in the market in this area of business neuroscience and consumer psychology and behavioral science. And there certainly is deficiencies. Quite a lot of frameworks they focus on some areas but leave others out, and they're all great in their done in the right way and in certain situations. But for what I do and what I teach, I just find that it needs to be a little bit more depth. But obviously, with the concept of cognitive overload and load that we talk about, to make sure it's very simple and easy to follow for people, so it's not too much. Anyway, so 4C's framework: clarity, connect, commit, and convert. So some of our challenges. Now, we've just talked about for the last hour and a half some of the tricky things that happens in the world of business and customers and how they behave. So let's just break it down in some of the challenges. We're understanding the minds of our customers. We made that very clear. What the decision-making triggers are. The lack of time and attention, extremely hyper-connected. We ignore our competitors. We are so focused and so immersed in our own businesses and in our own work and becoming better business people, and better at what we do and being the absolute experts, that we quite often, unfortunately more often than not, we ignore the others that are out there. We ignore our competitors. We ignore looking at what, even if they're not direct competitors, but what the market is doing, only to our detriment, unfortunately. We lack the confidence and the skill in upselling and cross-selling. We get the sale, we think that's great, but is there something that we can do at a later stage? Or is there something else that we could nudge the customer to get or to buy or to change a service or the next stage of a service, or to encourage them to then do a workshop or to buy an additional piece of jewelry, for instance, or subscription? There's so many things. It's quite often there's so much effort that's gone into getting that sale that we then go into that fatigue of upselling and cross-selling. We put too much emphasis on price. Price is my most hated P word. I really, really hate that word, because if you need to explain your pricing and someone wants to negotiate you down, it's because you haven't explained or positioned your value well enough. Once someone understands why your price is the way it is and what they get for it and the value and the knowledge that you bring, then they understand. But you need to get that message right and get that information out there for them to understand that. Again, I talked about the law of pulling your pants down with price. It is so important. And with I see this more and more with corporate, because even though they want as higher margins and they want as much revenue coming into the business, obviously they've got shareholders that they need to report back to the board. It's easy to just reduce the price, but unfortunately it causes lots of problems ongoing, because once you do it, everyone will expect it to be done every single time. So we put way too much emphasis on price. Good ideas are bad ideas. So sometimes what we think is a great idea or is a good idea actually isn't a good idea. It's actually a bad idea. So we need to test some of these things, and we need to use the support and the resources around us. And we underestimate the importance of emotion and behaviors. And I've made that very clear in the last two lessons about how important, how critical actually is a better word, of understanding the behaviors, understanding the thoughts, the emotion, and how people think. So a customer journey, what is it? People think of someone to buy my product or someone to work with me. It is, but they don't just appear and the next thing you know, they've bought something. There is an experience and a journey that they go on, and depending on how well you understand and nurture them through that journey and support them through, actually nurturing is more of a marketing word, but support them through that journey, is whether they will actually buy something or not. So the customer journey or customer journey map is a visual representation of the customer's experience and interaction. It's understanding the needs and the concerns of the customer. It identifies their motivations. It also identifies the barriers to purchase. What is stopping them from going all the way to the end to purchase something or to work with you? Where is it stopping and why is it stopping there? It identifies drop-off phases. So again, what is it that has triggered someone to say, nah, I don't want to work with you, or I don't want to buy your product? It is not linear. It's bi-directional, cyclical, and actually it should be multidimensional there, but yeah. And that's what it is. So it's not just a straight line. Someone's not just going from A to B. They are, but as you can see with the image on the right, it's very squiggly. There are lots of little turns and twists and things that customers need to do, and that you need to do too, sometimes, like jumping through hoops, as I'm sure all experienced, to get the customer to the end, to find the exit of the maze, so to speak. And it is really, really important to understand it is an emotional pathway to solving a problem. Remember, the decisions to solve a problem and to feel good, emotion and logic. So the criteria of a great customer journey map, or understanding what the experience is that your customer is going to go on from the time that there's a psychological trigger. They don't even know about you yet. They don't even know that they're going to engage with you, or you've got a product or a service that is going to solve their problem. But we need to make sure that they do. So the criteria is understanding the buyer persona, understanding their profile. I do a lot of work with profiling and personas with my clients, a lot. And this isn't also where people say, well, my ideal client is. No, your ideal client isn't this. Your ideal clients, plural. Every type of client that or customer that you have, you need to profile and do a sort of a persona map on, because if you don't, you're actually not going to understand your full sort of capture of the potential customers and prospects that you have. I talk often about the pyramid of priorities, and I teach this a lot, where at the top is technically your ideal client. And as you tier down, and there's generally 4 tiers, you've got a very broad area at the bottom that you may not even thought of, but they still need your services and they still need your help, but they're technically not your ideal client. I always say to my clients, so if those customers in tier 4 aren't yours, whose are they? Well, clearly they're your competitors. So what do we need to do to make them yours? So understanding them is really important. What is the buying process and channels? How can you intercept them subconsciously at different levels to nudge them along the pathway to the green tick? The touch points and user actions. What can you do? How can you influence them? So what are what channels and what's the process? But what is it that you can do? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it an advertisement? Is it an invitation to an event? What are the certain touch points that you can engage with to, again, give them that experience? Remember, mental shortcuts and, halo effect, the last experience, cocktail party effect, personalized experience, how we can use that. What are their motivators? What are their expectations? Understanding what their expectations are is really important, because again, we've got a lot of bias. We've just talked about it for an hour and a half. They do too, remember. So what we think they might be expecting isn't what they're expecting. So we need to understand that. What are the opportunities? So where is it that you can provide a service or something for them? Also, if you don't, what happens? And what are their emotions? So what are they feeling? Are they happy at this stage? Are they sad? Are they frustrated? Are they elated? Are they confused? Are things too complicated? What are they feeling along the journey? I just lost my mouse. So a buyer's journey. Now I've spent actually a whole 2 hours on customer journey, which we're obviously not doing today. I've broken it down. I've only given you what we use rather than what the traditional journey maps look like till now, because in the essence of time, obviously. So generally there's about 5 to 8 phases of a buyer or customer's journey. Excluding the emotional or the psychological trigger, which is right at the beginning. And then we go into these certain phases, which are critical: awareness, desire, research, consideration, purchase, post-purchase, and advocacy. A lot of people, and I'm sure you guys don't, but majority of people think that the journey ends at purchase. and you say, well, I've got the deal. I've got the client. You got the sale. Awesome. Actually, no. Anyone can sell something once, but how do you sell for years or multiple products? How do you service a customer for years? You want them then to refer to other people. You want them to bring, talk about you, shout it from the rooftops, obviously social proof. So that's where you build and amplify your business from the post-purchase and the advocacy. So what I've done here is a little bit slow. What I have done here, and I don't know why, but it should have, let's forget that. There should be, so what I was doing with that was showing you at each stage of the framework where the phases of the customer journey was. But anyway, we'll come back to that. This slide, though, at each stage, clarity, connect, commit, convert, I have then correlated the types of biases and nudging that you can use at each stage to get your customers to buy from you or to work with you and engage with you. So I'm not going to read them all out, but we can see that there are certain tactics that we can use at each stage based on our first two lessons for the customer to get clarity about what you do, what services you offer, what products you offer, how you can help them and solve their problem. Then we have different biases, and this is not an exhaustive list. This is just based on the biases we use today. Connection, so that emotional connection, that building trust, building that relationship. I want to tell you a story, that kind of work, that absolute connection. Why they feel that there is a need to work with you or to buy your product, how they feel if they don't, so what they're going to be missing out on. Then you go into commit. So they've decided that you can definitely help them, that there is an emotional connection. You're good at what you do. It's relevant to them. It feels good. They've had a great experience. And then convert. They become your customers, but not just your customers and your clients, long-term customers and clients. So you've created a fantastic experience. You've used the peak end rule. So there's been a great feeling of experience at the peak and at the end. They feel, got loss aversion scares, so that if they don't, they're going to miss out on something. That if they go to a competitor, they're not going to get the service or get the quality of service or the product that you have. That you are known in the industry to work with high profile clients or with clients that rave about you. I want to be one of those clients. That's the conversion. So I've just, like I said, correlated the biases and the commandments with the 4 C's framework, just to make it a little bit easier for you. So we'll just go into these a little bit more. So with clarity, which is at your awareness and desire stage, these things I want you to think about as well. Is your messaging, product positioning, services, unique value proposition easy for people to understand? Are all your messages consistent across all platforms? And this is where we get this quite wrong. This is where we need the help of marketing. What we're putting out there on social media, on every platform, every channel needs to be the same, even in terms of our branding, our colors. So color psychology comes in, business psychology and branding psychology, the consistent messaging, seeing the same logo, seeing the same colors, seeing the same positioning, seeing the same patterns and geometry that's associated with your archetype or your brand. Are the customers even aware that you exist? So do they know that you're around and that you can help them? How do you create emotional bond? And how will your customer decide which product, make or model, or service is right for them without having to process too much information? And this is where website design and the delivery of information is so important. So unfortunately, though, in these days, where people used to go to websites and they wanted stacks and stacks and stacks of information because they wanted to know everything about you. We just talked about for nearly 2 hours cognitive overload. That has changed. People want to get a quick snapshot of something that is articulated beautifully on a website to see if it is a fit for purpose. So it is really important that the messaging that is there, they're going to see and quickly read. Again, remember, we don't want them filling in the spaces with their own information. We want to have it all there, but it needs to be simple. We need to make sure that that is very clear for them. Connect, which is your research and your consideration. What's your competitive advantage? What do you do that stands out? Salience stands out. What types of questions do your customers need answering, and where do they find those? So quite often now, what's a good idea is to actually have an FAQ section on your website. That's not for everybody, but if there is more questions, rather than having all this content, rather than right in front of you, having somewhere to go if they want to know more. It's their choice. You're giving them permission to decide if they want to go somewhere else to find out more information or not, rather than bombarding them with something that is not clear and potentially losing them. How can you demonstrate the features and benefits the customer is looking for? And are you being transparent about what you do and about you yourself? There's a lot of companies and businesses out there that unfortunately are either inflating the importance of what they do. I know that sounds really terrible, but that's the only way I can think of putting it. They are lying. I hate to say it, but they are making up fake reviews. They are what the product is that they sell doesn't actually do what they're saying that it does. Same with the services. You know, I always say it takes 10 years to build a reputation and 10 seconds to lose it. So you need to be as transparent and honest and ethical, my favorite E word, as possible. Commit, which is the consideration and the purchase. Once the customer begins the buying process, are they completing the purchase? If they're not, how do you nudge them to make sure that they're completing the purchase? Is the process personalized and relevant? If you have an e-commerce website, or if they're coming to find out information on your website or asking about you, how many times are they doing it before they actually commit to buying something or inquiring? What kind of social proof is available for you and your business? How are you demonstrating the value? And really importantly, are you losing customers, and where are they dropping off? Where are you losing them? And then convert, which is your purchase, post-purchase, and advocacy. After the customer shops with you, are they coming back? Are they satisfied with what you're doing? Did they have a fabulous experience? How personalized was it? Have you built an emotional customer relationship? And how likely are they to tell the world about what you do and how great you are, because you are, and how fantastic the product and service is, so other people can benefit from, you know, your genius. So with the map, I've just put the phases, and I put an example of what and this is something that I build for my clients, of where we go right, but where we go wrong. And then with that comes the potential risk of what is happening at awareness that goes from trust to annoyance, for instance. What's, say, consideration from joy to loathing, from purchase anticipation to annoyance, from advocacy delight to anger. So what is it that we can do to de-risk the journey to make sure we always, or not always, 8 or 9 times out of 10, because we don't win every sale, and we don't want to win every sale. We want, let's say 80%, like 80%. I love even numbers, so 8's good. How do we get 8 out of 10 customers following the green journey line to the end and beyond? This is just a slide to basically break down everything that we've just talked about. The 4 C's framework with their icons, the biases, the commandments, and the customer journey map phases.